Morning, everybody. My bad. It's been 2 weeks, so get back into the swing of things. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cults and Conspiracies. I am Jade, and I will be joined by Jaded Atheist here in just a minute. Jade will be joining me. Today is a very research-heavy episode. On the Branch Davidians, it's going to be a lot of reading. Yeah, Chris is pretending he won't be there, and Raven says, "I'm pretending I never saw you." So, so there's not a lot of discussion about. There will be some. Chris is with us in the background. He'll be fielding comments in super chats if you guys have any. He'll get them posted for us. Today I will not be covering the Seige at Waco or any of the conspiracies surrounding the Branch Davidians. That will be next week. This week is just history of who the Branch Davidians were, who David Koresh were, and why the Branch Davidians were considered a cult. I have two very interesting articles that I had found. One from the ABC News in 2018 on who David Koresh was, and then I actually found an original story published in the Waco Tribune Herald on March 1st, 1993. This article was by a gentleman named Rick Rocks, who is a cult deprogrammer who works in Phoenix, who explains why the Branch Davidians themselves were an actual cult. So, interesting articles in what was going on. Chris, do you want to jump in real quick and let everybody know what's going on this weekend, Hereticals, as we're waiting for Jade?
Well, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, it's your channel, so. No, we got heaps coming up. Well, I say heaps. I think we've already done heaps, but I'm trying to get a ton more videos out. So you're probably, ideally, I want to get like 4 to 5 videos a week out. So you'll probably see a lot more over the next few weeks. Had a really cool conversation on nuclear energy last night, or yesterday, depending on where you are, with Jen and Matt. That was pretty cool. On Friday, of course, we've got Friday Night Six Pack as always, but we've also got On the Couch starting Friday morning Australian time, Thursday evening in the US, which is a bit of a, I guess it goes back to some of what the channel originally was, which was tackling secular issues and sort of building community. It's Jen and Jade are both running that one, so it's that's sort of a little project they've been working on for a bit, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to that actually. But on Saturday, probably the one I'm looking forward to most, because I think we'll learn so much from it, is we're going to be watching Kent Hovind's video on how to make money and spend it God's way. So I think if anyone can teach us about money, it's good old Kent Hovind.
Good old Kent.
He knows how to stash it. So so that'll be on Saturday.
Apparently not very well though.
No, well, you wouldn't know. I reckon he's probably got money hidden everywhere. He's he's not living like a pauper. So,
well, he's even got a personal assistant now.
Oh yeah, he wouldn't be paying the personal assistant, of course. That's I think he's just moved him in, hasn't he? So, the heir to the throne. But yeah, there's some cool stuff coming up on the channel this week. But,
is there something going on Sunday, or be Saturday your night? I thought there was something else.
Yeah, that's what literally just said.
No, that was Six Pack.
No, the Kent Hovind video.
Oh, Kent Hovind's not Six Pack. That's right.
Now on Six Pack, we did have a topic lined up for Six Pack, but I think we're going to be doing a spooky Halloween special. So, anyway, I've got some great news for you all, and that's that you don't have to listen to me anymore because Jade is here. So I'm going to go away, do things in the background, and enjoy the show.
Morning, girly.
How are you?
I'm good. You got a lot of feedback going on there. You got a fan going?
I don't. Um, hold on. Is that better?
No, but it's not too bad.
Okay. I'm using a different computer today and a different setup because my husband's using my laptop for working out. So
Cool.
it's a little different this morning.
So, are you excited for your show coming up?
Yes, I am. I actually need to message Jen today so we can talk about that.
Cool. What do you know about the Branch Davidians?
I do not know anything. I'm going to be learning a lot today.
Cool. Yeah, Brilliant says it sounds like you're coming off the webcam mic and not the actual mic itself.
Oh, that could be. Let me check here.
And then Sandy says it sounds like a computer fan also.
I might just mute you for a second, Jade. Just give me a thumbs up when you think you've got it sorted, and I'll bring you back on.
Cool.
Oh, actually, you've just muted yourself, so you need to unmute yourself if you're done. But I'll just wait for you. Anyway, Branch Davidians.
Branch Davidians.
Branch Davidians. I think most of us would have heard of them probably for the first time. I know certainly from an international point of view when Waco happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something I've never really looked into apart from knowing that most likely the guy was a nut job. But essentially, I wasn't his belief that, or it wasn't his claim that he was the second coming of Jesus.
He was the Son of God.
Okay, so brother.
I did, yeah. He was Jesus incarnate. But we'll get into that here in just a minute. So, Jade's still working on that. I guess I'll.
Does this sound better?
Nope, didn't sound any different.
Okay.
That's all right. Just stay muted unless you got a question, and we'll go from there. So, all right. With that being said,
that's what you do to me most times. So
yeah,
I'm going to go and mute myself. But before I do that, there's a $5 super chat that's come through.
$5 from Digital Demonic Davros. It seems I'm getting noticed as a Davidian. Being a David is hard since '94. Anyways, Jay hasn't responded to my Cuddles comment. # research me Cuddles. I didn't see any Cuddles comment. You got oh my. Alex Jones. Uncle David's watching. I don't see a Cuddle comment. But big Cuddles unless it's on TikTok, and I haven't looked at TikTok yet today. So
I have to go watch your new TikToks.
Yeah, okay, he does say TikTok. Okay, yeah, I haven't got a chance to look at it yet, Davros. So, all right, let's get into this. So the Branch Davidians, or the General Association of the Branch Davidians Seventh-Day Adventists, were a religious cult founded in 1955 by Benjamin Rhoden. They regarded themselves as a continuation of the General Association of Davidian Seventh-Day Adventists, which was founded in 1929 by Victor Houteff. Its president and prophet. Houteff joined the Seventh-Day Adventist Church in 1919, but was also disfellowshipped in 1930 for promoting heretical doctrines. Can you hear me? Okay. Do you know, or does anybody know who the Seventh-Day Adventists are or what they believe in? Because, I do have that I'm going to go over, but
I have heard of the Seventh-Day Adventists, but I'm not sure what they believe.
I can actually step in on this one. This is exciting. It turns out I do know something. The Seventh-Day Adventists, they're a Christian offshoot, I guess, in a similar fashion to the Jehovah's Witnesses. They are non-Trinitarian, and essentially the thing that they're best known for is that instead of doing church on a Sunday, Saturday is their holy day, and they are pretty strict with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to work with a gentleman years ago that was Seventh-Day Adventist, and yeah, really nice guy though. Really, he was one of the nicest guys you ever meet.
Look, most of them are. They tend to keep to themselves, and I guess they know that they're certainly within their communities they're very close. But you generally won't have too many problems with them.
So I just basically grabbed a quick rundown on what they are. So the Seventh-Day Adventists accept the Bible.
Incidentally, they own Sanitarium, which owns Weet-Bix.
Huh.
Which I've just seen that, as I've said that, I would say great minds think alike, because almost Dr. Matt has put, are they the ones that own Sanitarium? So, yes, they are. And yes, they did also make Weet-Bix as a method to reduce sex drive. So that is scarily true.
Okay. So the Seventh-Day Adventists accept the Bible as their only creed and hold certain fundamental beliefs to be the teaching of the Holy Scriptures. Their beliefs constitute the church's understanding and expressions of the teaching of the Scripture. They have 28 core beliefs that they hold true and sacred. So that's just a basic breakdown of who the Seventh-Day Adventists are. So, Hutef, a Bulgarian immigrant and a Seventh-Day Adventist, wrote a series of tracts entitled The Shepherd's Rod, which called for the reform of the Seventh-Day Adventist Church. After his ideas were rejected by Adventist leaders, Hutef and his followers founded the Davidians and settled on a tract of land in the western outskirts of Waco, Texas, where they built a compound called Mount Carmel Center and began prepping for the Second Coming. Most of you will recognize the name of the Mount Carmel because that is where the Siege of Waco, what happened, was at the Mount Carmel Center. The community flourished there, growing to around 90 people in 1955. Hutef had complete authority, viewed by his followers as the only person who could reveal biblical secrets at the end of the time. Excuse me. Among his teachings, Hutef stated that he would not die, but would lead his people to Old Jerusalem and therefore the heavenly Canaan. Because of this, Hutef's sudden death at Hillcrest Hospital, caused by heart failure, came as a shock to the Davidians. The loss of their leader.
Isn't it like massively awkward when you say, "I will not die, and I'll lead you to the promised land," and then you go and die? Like,
yeah,
it's kind of like that. Well, I guess you're not really there to clean up the pieces, but I reckon there's probably some people who were probably sitting back going, "Huh, how about that?" Oops.
Pete Harrington says, "Sorry I'm late. I have a note from my mom, but do you have a note from your doctor?"
Yeah, you'll need to forward that to us, and fill out the tardy slip.
So the loss of their leader led to an instability within the church organization leadership, along with the formation of several splinter groups. Prior to his passing, Hutef had appointed his second wife, Florence Hutef, to lead the Davidians until the Lord chose another prophet to take charge. Under her leadership, the community sold their property near Lake Waco for residential development and resettled in 1957. They resettled on a 941-acre farm located 9 miles east of Waco near Elk, which they called New Mount Carmel. Florence Hutef and the other leaders predicted the imminent establishment of the God's kingdom on April 22nd, 1959. They called on members to gather at the New Mount Carmel before that date, which coincided with Passover. About 900 gathered, but when signs did not appear, the Davidians began to disperse quickly. So yeah, 900. Yeah, it's a much bigger than, because you're looking in 4 years. They had 90 people in 55 and 900 come to show up in 59. So
you would have to think, and here's where I guess some of these cults really, it's amazing that people follow them, because 4 years earlier, this fellow who is going to lead them to the promised land and will not die, the prophet of this religion, dies. And 4 years later, they're there for another failed prophecy, but in greater numbers. That it really shows, I guess, the way that the brain will sort of stretch for these things. And obviously, I mean, we know that it then continues on after that, well on. So it's quite It's baffling. It's. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses are the same. I mean, they've had that many failed doomsdays that you sort of wonder at some point they've got to just turn around and go, you know what? Maybe there's something wrong with this.
Yeah, it's. Go ahead, Jane.
There's always a justification. Like anytime my family had that happen, where we thought, okay, the end of the world is coming, and then it didn't happen, then it was, oh, well, we mistranslated this part, or, there's always some type of justification to cling on to that idea.
Yeah, it seems with these cults, mistranslation seems to be the biggest excuse for why things didn't happen. Oh, we mistranslated. It actually means this day. Oh, actually, we mistranslated that one.
Yeah, they still claim that they've got the perfect understanding, and only their sect of the church is the correct one. It's just they got that one little thing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I think if I was ever to start a doomsday cult, I'd make sure that the day of reckoning was well after I'm gone, because I mean I can't think of anything worse than sort of being an 80-something-year-old and going, oh, the end's coming in 3 weeks, and then sort of going, shit, what do I do?
I missed a comment here. Raven said this. Talk about the 7-Day Adventists. They're vegetarian. They do no TV, only talk radio, and the kids go to the 7-Day Adventist schools.
Yeah, that's
yep.
Yeah, it's. I didn't actually realize the vegetarian thing. That's interesting. All the no TV. That's actually really sad and ironic, considering sanitarium advertises on TV. But yeah, it's. I do remember. I used to get the school bus to school, and we'd stop off and drop. There was one kid from our town who went to the Seventh-Day Adventist school, and yeah, it was just like this little school that they ran, and yeah, I think the Seventh-Day Adventists are reasonably harmless. I don't think. I mean that. I don't. But you know what? Maybe that's for another cults and conspiracies.
I talked to throughout being on YouTube and stuff, I've talked to a couple of different people, and one girl reached out to me, and she went to a Seventh-Day Adventist school, and she did not have a pleasant experience there. But I don't know if that's common throughout all of the denomination, or if that's like a common thing like the Catholic Church. But she and her sister experienced abuse at the school.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like just because of who they were, or was it a female thing? Or
I think it was a female thing.
Okay, yeah. I think unfortunately a lot of those religions are they're not the most forward thinking when it comes to women's rights. Yeah, well, I mean that happens a lot in Christianity, though, doesn't it? I mean, as you've experienced, Jade, and you sort of mentioned on other streams some of the stuff that you went through. So,
yep.
Raven says, me too, Chris. It was a huge compound where I was from, though, and they put the Catholic nuns to shame. And Verillion says, Chris, I wouldn't join your cult. Now, if Jen started one, I'm bringing the combi, acoustic guitar, and growing a long beard.
Absolutely.
Well, you can still do that in my cult. I mean, it's you got to try these things. Although Jen's cult would be pretty kick-ass. I mean, there's no point in denying it. Jen would make a great cult leader.
She really would.
Yeah, I might even have a chat with Jenny. If I always like to think that Jen is watching, but if she's not, we might have some fun talking about the cult of Jen on Six Pack.
There we go. All right, so moving on. Throughout Lois Rhoden's leadership, her son George Rhoden claimed. I'm sorry. Let me kick back here just a little bit. Okay. While this gathering, I skipped like 2 paragraphs. So while this gathering took place, Benjamin Rhoden, a former 7-Day Adventist who had accepted the teachings of the shepherd rod in 1946, announced that he was the sign the Davidians were seeking. The failure of the prophecy discredited Florence Houteff, and a small following looked to Rhoden as their new prophet. Rhoden's Branch Davidian claimed... What?
No, that was my bad. I went to reply to something in the chat and accidentally unmuted the stream.
Oh, okay. Rhoden's Branch Davidians claimed the new Mount Carmel property, which was now 77 acres. Rhoden centered his teaching on the significance of the restored state of Israel, which would be the sign of preparation for Christ's return to earth. Rhoden traveled to Israel and established a small community of followers there prior to his death in 78. Lois Rhoden assumed leadership in the Branch Davidian following her husband's death. Her teachings centered on the female nature of the Holy Spirit and the co-dominion of women and men in the church. This corresponded with the ideas circulating from the feminist movement in the 1970s and the growing egalitarian teachings of many Adventist sects. Beginning in 1979, Rhoden began publishing Shekinah, a short-lived journal on women's place in religion. She also often spoke to media outlets about the femininity of the Holy Spirit, hoping to spread her teachings to a wider audience. Throughout Lois Rhoden's leadership, her son George Rhoden claimed to be the next heir apparent to the Branch Davidians. However, he was not widely respected within the community, and his own mother, did not support his claim. She had aligned herself with Vernon Howell, a young charismatic Bible teacher who had first arrived at Mount Carmel in 1981. After briefly leaving, he had returned in the mid-'80s and gained support and growing following amongst the Branch Davidians. Despite this, George Rhoden was able to gain control of Mount Carmel in 1985, expelling Howell's rival faction at gunpoint. Howell and his followers resettled in Palestine, Texas, but returned to Mount Carmel 2 years later to gain control of the Mount Carmel property. Mount Carmel's imminent. I'm kicking my ass today. 8 men, including Howell, exchanged gunfire with Rhoden on November 3rd, 1987, before being arrested and charged with attempted murder. Howell's followers were all acquitted, and Howell's case was declared a mistrial. Because Rhoden owned thousands of dollars in unpaid taxes on Mount Carmel, Howell and his followers were able to raise the funds and reclaim the property. Howell perpetrated many distinct Davidian traditions, including an authoritarian leader, communal life separate from society, and the anticipation of the imminent end of the world. In 1990, he changed his name to what we now know as David Koresh, signifying his messianic role in carrying out the divinely commissioned task of defeating the enemies of God. While previous leaders of the Davidians, such as Hutef, had been pacifists, Koresh began stockpiling weapons and ammunition to defend the faithful. Authorities suspected the Branch Davidians possessed illegal firearms, and on February 28, 1993, the U.S. Bureau of Tobacco and Alcohol and Firearms raided the compound, beginning in a 51-day Branch Davidian siege. Today, both Davidians and Branch Davidian exist in scattered communities in the United States and around the world. A small group of Branch Davidians still live and worship at Mount Carmel today, called the Branch, the Lord our righteousness. This group claims David Koresh twisted biblical teachings, but other Branch Davidians, some also living at Mount Carmel, still align themselves with Koresh and his version of the Branch Davidian faith.
So to ask, and maybe this is a dumb question, I'm not too sure, but my understanding is in the US, you're all pretty much allowed to have as many guns as you want, in particular in Texas. So why would there be a raid or on the property by the FBI? I mean, okay, yeah, sure, they're crazy cult people, but does that mean that they're not entitled to have weapons?
Well, that is something we'll actually be getting into next week.
Okay.
But just as a small snippet, they believe they were actually holding much illegal weaponry like rocket launchers, grenade launchers, fully automatic heavy machine guns, stuff like that. So that is the official story.
Okay.
So, but we'll like I said, next week we'll get in, like I said, the siege itself, the 51 days, and then the conspiracies, and its connection to Ruby Ridge and the Oklahoma City bombing.
Oh, so, wow. Okay. So
yeah.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah. The three hold a very big connection: Ruby Ridge, Waco, Texas, Oklahoma City. So. Yeah, like Raven says, stockpiling along with a belief system causes fear and an uprising against the government.
It does tend to happen a lot here.
Yeah.
But also, so does getting illegal weapons.
Yeah. You're not supposed to own rocket launchers.
No, you're not.
But
Oh, wow.
America.
Merca.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Merca. So who was David Koresh? So long before he became the prophet, this is from let me start this off. This is from the ABC News article, January 2nd, 2018. I've Out everything I read about this was probably the best article I found.
ABC News.
Yeah.
Fake news. That's fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news. Don't listen to it.
But this had probably the best rundown of who David Koresh was and kind of what he stood for. So that's why I went with this one. So the title of the article is "Who Was David Koresh? Ex-followers describe his life inside apocalyptic religious sect involved in the 1993 Waco siege." So, long before he became the prophet and leader of the Branch Davidians, Koresh was just a boy growing up in Texas. Born Vernon Howell to a teenage mother in 1959, Koresh claimed he had memorized both the New and Old Testaments of the Bible by the time he was 18 years old. He claimed that when he was a child, God had spoken to him and said, "You are the chosen one. You are my Messiah." Journalist Mary Garofalo, who covered the events at the Waco news program, A Current Affair, told ABC News. Former Davidian David Bunz said that he first met Koresh in the summer of '81. He thought Koresh seemed lost. He was kind of a drifter, Bunz told ABC News. He had a car that he was driving and said the Lord gave it to him. He was a very disheveled kind of guy. He continued, he was poor, obviously, and didn't have a job, or at least a regular job. By '83, Koresh had joined a religious sect that called themselves the Branch Davidians, or the Branch Davidians, a splinter group of the Seventh-Day Adventist Church, founded by former Seventh-Day Adventists. We went through all that. One of the things that being a Branch Davidian was you're supposed to separate yourself from the world. Bunn said the world is the sins, the flesh, the desires of the world, and you are supposed to be spiritual. Former followers said the compound had no running water, heat, or electricity, and there was Bible study 3 times a day. Branch Davidian Clive Doyle said Koresh had been interested in music, and Lois Rhoden encouraged him to continue to sing and play guitar, which became part of the group's daily Bible study sessions. He believed he was King David, Doyle said. He was using music to reach a lot of people. We're thinking it's a stage name, but it was more than that. In 1990, Vernon Howell changed his name to David Koresh. 2 years later, he had taken over the group, encouraging the use of guns and preaching an ever-increasing brand of apocalyptic prophecy. He believed that the group would someday be under attack by the U.S. government and began stockpiling guns and ammunition.
Just really quickly, without wanting to sound awful, that kind of sums up a lot of American preachers at the moment. A lot of American preachers are pro-gun, anti, the government's coming to get us. Like this is, I'm listening to this, and okay, yeah, from my opinion, is the guy's clearly not all. He's got some screws loose, or he's a sociopath, one of the two, possibly a sociopath. But how would he fit in to modern day? Like he would probably be one of the rising YouTube Christians.
Oh yeah, he'd be right up there with what's his name that just got kicked off Twitter.
Ed Grumpy
No. Glock, Greg Glock.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's he's not really coming out. I would assume he would have had views on like LGBT issues, things like that, that weren't necessarily as prevalent in the 80s and 90s. But when I say not prevalent, not as spoken about, or they weren't the big Christian fundamentalist bashing point. But I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of difference between him and a lot of modern fundamentalism.
No,
not much.
This reminds me so much of my growing up.
Yep. Man, that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, The funny thing here is he's kind of talking about his increasing brand of apocalyptic prophecy. He kind of made it a self-fulfilling prophecy by stockpiling the guns because they would be someday under attack by the government, which happened because of the stockpiling of guns.
So he was right.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on.
There you go.
Oh.
So former followers said Koresh truly believed he was on a mission from God and was the only one who could interpret the Bible and its true meaning for the masses. That's another one you need to watch out for with cult leaders. They're always the only ones that can interpret the Bible correctly. Or interpret the message, whatever it is, correctly. No one else but them can do it.
A bit like that Dalai Lama guy.
Yeah, you shush. His I was gonna say something, but I'm not gonna. Just bait me. Go ahead, bait me.
Buddha is just the Eastern version of Jesus.
There are a lot of similarities. I'll give you that.
Both made up by the same person?
No. Anyways. So his message changed over the years because he was always looking for the next big thing to teach that would shock people into listening to him, Bunn said. It was important for David Koresh to isolate the group from the world because the world is an influence that is constantly pulling and distracting you from the message. Former followers said women had to wear long blouses, no makeup or jewelry could be worn. They said Koresh would tell them where to sleep and what food they can eat. Sugar, processed flour, and dairy products were forbidden. That kind of sounds like just a kind of a meal plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Raven, exactly. That is a lot. Yeah, that we'll get into that next week. More into that next week. But yeah, Sheila Martin, who moved to the compound with her husband and 5 children in '88, said it was fun as long as we were being obedient. If we weren't being obedient in the sense of like I went to the store and bought something that I was being selfish, she continued. He would always let us know that it wasn't right and we should have done it differently, and many times it was in front of everyone. Former followers said discipline was constantly administered. Joan Vega, who was 6 years old when she left the compound, said she remembers being hit regularly as a kid. Being disciplined was like a 24/7 thing. There's nothing that you could do right. That is how I felt as a kid. That fear, that nothing you can do is going to be good enough. You're raised with just fear. Everywhere is fear. That's another cult leader tactic is the strong sense of control, the making everybody scared that if they do something wrong, they'll be punished, and the constant enforcement. So.
Oh yeah, my family used that tactic as well. The spare the rod or whatever that Bible verse is about sparing the rod and brings
spare
up
the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah, they've heavily believed that.
Yeah, it is. I can say because I remember the '80s. I don't know.
Hang on, just to clarify, the 1980s or the 1880s?
1780s.
1780s.
I remember the 1480s too, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, it was a different time, just like it was in the 70s and the 60s and going back further, where they call it corporal punishment now, was a big thing. If you got in trouble, you were spanked, or you had to go out and get your own switch and things like that. So for hearing that about the punishment is not that surprising in that time frame. Now, to hear that type of punishment now would shock a lot of people more than it did in the 80s. Just the time difference and what was considered okay to be used as punishment compared to what now is okay as punishment. So And I'm not justifying what he did was right. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of what I'm not justifying what he did, but during that time, that was actually a normal. I remember being spanked in school for doing something wrong. I don't remember what it was I did, but I remember having to bend over the chair with my face above this big ass ashtray in the principal's office while I got paddled um, with a paddle in school.
That's insane to me.
Because that was normal back then.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said,
That's sad that was normal. It's like I look back at that, and I was lucky. I was the generation that just missed things like the cane and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if any teacher tried to do that to one of my children, I'd walk up and probably provide them with a similar kind of punishment. Like it's,
Yeah.
I would just, I don't understand it. And look, maybe that's because of the era that I live in and have been born into.
Yeah, and like I said,
it's messed up.
For you guys, you're both younger than I am. It's too.
Everyone's younger than you are, Methuselah.
Methuselah is younger than I am. Anyways, for you guys not to understand what we grew up with, it's hard for you to wrap your minds around the concept of what we went through. I see Granny's in the chat. What she went through is different from a little bit different than what I went through in the 70s and the 80s. So when I hear, I don't want to stick on this topic too long because we need to get back, but to hear the younger generation going, I can't believe you guys went through that. I can't believe this is what happened. It was a different time. There were a lot of unknown things. I mean, we didn't have what we're doing now. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We had a lot of things that were handed down and passed down generation to generation. So those generations only knew what was passed down to them because knowledge wasn't as readable as it is now. Now we know that a lot of that stuff is extremely harmful to the psyche, which is one of the reasons why Gen X just don't give a fuck anymore. Because, we got so used to a lot of different things happening to us that you guys can't comprehend because you didn't live through it. So more on that topic on a different date, because there is a lot to be had between Gen X and millennials. The differences is I think would be a good conversation to have. So,
Yeah.
But we'll get back to the topic at hand. Yeah, ping pong paddles, shoes, wooden spoons. Yeah. So, meter stick or yardstick, knuckles on the school. Yep. So, anyway, so going back to what we were talking about. So, Vegas said Koresh constantly told them that the end of the world was coming and that they were the chosen people to survive because David was the son of God. She said they were taught to prepare for war and that the end times, as predicted by the book of Revelation, was near. Every cult that is anywhere surrounding Christianity will always tell you the end is near. According to the book of Revelations, we are in the apocalyptic time and we've been there for 2,000 years. So every generation is the generation. This is the end time. So Nobody gets it right. So Koresh had his own children too. Dana Okimoto, who gave birth to his son Sky Okimoto, told ABC News in 2003 interview that children are kept in line by a wooden paddle and face severe beatings for minor infractions like spilling a glass of milk. She said she remembered being so under Koresh's control that she beat Sky until he bled. That is a little excessive. I mean, not a little excessive, a lot excessive. Even for back then. If there was one thing I could take back, I would take back the spankings, Dana Okamoto said at the time. I felt like the most evil person in the world to be beating my baby this way, but that is what God wanted and needed of me. Former followers said Koresh would separate families from each other. Bruce Perry told that if Koresh thought a mother and child had a tighter bond than between him and the child, then Koresh would tell the parent, "You haven't been disciplining them adequately, so I'm going to have this mother raise your kids." Everyone as a community was taking care of kids, Vega said. It wasn't your parent, It wasn't that your parent was your parent. Everyone was supposed to be a parent. Anyone could spank anyone because everyone was a parent. Doyle said Koresh asked his followers, including married couples, to embrace celibacy. Then that's another that's that. So remember that, because that's another cult behavior, and as we'll see, you as a cult are supposed to be celibate, but I can have sex with whoever I want. That's another big cult leader mentality there too.
It goes to show like the level of belief that these people must have had, because I mean they're not living under great conditions. I mean, it's okay. We can all have a bit of a chuckle about that. Everyone has to be celibate and stuff, but I mean the diet that they were put on sounds terrible. The conditions they were living in weren't great. The children are being mistreated. But there really has to be some amazing mental gymnastics to get to that level of belief.
Well,
It baffles me, and it's funny every time we look at these cults. It really baffles me how people can get to this point.
mm-hmm. A lot of it has to do, and I was talking to Raven earlier. If you look at the pictures of David Koresh, especially the one we've got up for the thumbnail, and you look at the pictures of Ted Bundy, there's a lot of similarities there. They were both good-looking men, very charismatic. That's how they got away with what they did. Koresh with his cult, and Bundy with his victims, because of it's the charisma. That's what drives people in, the believability. Not to go too off a tangent, but some of the aspects is Koresh would use his charisma to do what he's doing now, and his overconfidence and his big charisma. For any D&D fans, he'd have like a 19 charisma. Bundy was the same way with his victims. He was an attractive man. Two, with his charisma, he could walk up to a woman with an arm in a sling and get her to come help him load stuff into his Volkswagen, and they wouldn't think twice about it, because the way he portrayed himself, the way his charisma was, and the way his looks were, he could get people to believe a lot of things, including if anybody's seen the Netflix movie Vile, Evil, and I don't remember, something Vile and Evil, whatever, the Ted Bundy movie that Zac Efron made, which I tell you is an extremely well done movie, being a serial killer fan. But this was written off a book that Bundy's girlfriend / wife had written about the time. So that's what a lot of people didn't understand when they watched it, was that it's based off of her interactions, not what actually happened. But it does show the charisma that people like some serial killers and cult leaders, politicians and billionaires all share those same types of qualities. Yeah, like Raven says, they feed off the base fear people have. They can walk up to people on the street, and they work in the fears of the government people may already have, and Bible prophecy fears as well. Yeah, and like Granny says, today's normal is tomorrow's abuse. Exactly. It was normal then, is now considered abuse now. We may find out that the timeout system that we think is good for learning today could be in the future. Pardon me. Mental abuse. So it's the one thing with our species is we're constantly learning, constantly evolving, constantly knowing and changing. So, but back on track is like I said, I want to get back to this, but I want to reiterate what I said there. Cult leaders, serial killers, politicians, billionaires, millionaires, CEOs, they all have the same kind of mentality. It's all linked in the psychopathy. A lot of politicians, it is said that politicians and billionaires, if they hadn't have there's the chance if they hadn't gone down the route that they went, they could have ended up in the same lines as Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer. So it's just a matter of which way the dice rolled for them. They used it for this instead of that, or they could have become cult leaders, or so.
I believe it. They're over the top personality. And, Yep, it makes sense.
So, where was I at? Okay. After embracing celibacy, then Bunn said Koresh claimed all marriages in the groups were dissolved, and that all of the women should be his wives if he wanted them, even though Koresh was legally married to one woman, Rachel Jones. David Koresh's justification for taking all of the women for himself was theological. He's the one that had the power. He was the one that had the authority to give the seed, Bunn said, adding that if he had sex with a woman, Koresh would say that she was in the house of David. So, yeah, being a member of the house of David was a privilege, he said.
That sounds like a really bad pickup line. As not funny as it is, like, it's just, how fucking corny is that?
Yeah.
Welcome to the house of David. So it's basically David would be having the children with some of the other wives, added former follower David Thibodeau. There were allegations from some of Koresh's former followers that it wasn't just the adult women he wanted. I'm not going to go into too much here because this actually leads into next week's episode. I want to kind of skip over this part.
Yeah, be careful with this because we don't want the stream taken down.
One of his youngest brides wasn't even in her teens. So,
jeez.
And that came from a lady named Kiri Jewell, who had testified before Congress that Koresh had her at a motel. By Jewell's account, Koresh had as many as 20 lives by the time he died on April 19th, 1993. Let's see. So Buns said he wished he knew now what he knew then, and he wished he would have been able to do something. I don't know what I would have done, but I wish I had done something. This is I'm trying to keep it. This is in correlation with child brides. Is probably the best way I can explain that. So, he also goes on to say, I'll call it a cult. That's what it was. It's people doing things they wouldn't normally do, like giving up their wives and letting children, which is crazy, but that's what you do when you're in a cult. Someone says they have authority and they impose upon your rules and restrictions and expectations, and it gets down into your soul, and it really screws you. So that's basically David Koresh, how it's some background on him and what he did with it from the eyes of former Davidians, which is why I picked this one, because this is actually coming from people who were there, who witnessed these things firsthand. So, yeah. Native atheists. How did he get away with that? That once again, that'll probably be next week. Next week's episode is probably going to be a long one because there is a lot of stuff to get into. Depending on how much I actually dig into this, we end up making a three-parter. I want to try to keep it to two, so it may just run long. But there is a lot of stuff, like I said, not just the cult aspect of the Branch Davidians, but like I said earlier, the connection to Ruby Ridge in Oklahoma City. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. So any questions before we move on to what more actually considers? How should I put this? Did we get into the article that states why Branch Davidians are considered a cult?
Don't have any questions. this is where I disconnect from, from my religion. What I believed is, there's so much stretching you can do, and there's so much justification you can do. But once someone starts putting their hands on your child, like, I just don't, there's no amount of mental gymnastics I can do that justifies that or makes that okay. And I don't understand that mentality. That's where I get lost, is how do you get so wrapped up into a cult that you let someone hurt your baby?
Mm-hmm. I'm completely with you on that, Jade. It's all I can put it down to is, I guess there's a lot of brainwashing and mental programming that goes into it. And not all parents are equal. I mean, let's be honest. I think you're probably of the same mindset as me, Jade. I'd imagine, Jay, you're the same. Where we would protect our children at all costs. It's that I know everything I do. I do to ensure my children have a better life. It's they are my number one focus. But not everyone's like that. And it's sad, and I accept that, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it, because it's...
I have always said that the one thing I will be willing to go to jail for the rest of my life is if somebody touches somebody I love that are my
100%.
I will happily spend the rest of my life in jail if I beat that son of a bitch to death. And I would be, and the thing is, in prison, I wish Ed was here because he could speak more on this, but for those who take out or beat those types of people are treated very well, because that is one of the no-nos in prison, is you don't touch kids because kids can't defend themselves.
Yep, 100%.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some tough people in jail, but a lot of them are all fathers and husbands, and but anyway, I think let's move on, because it's stuff like that just makes me angry, and it's probably a trigger moment for a lot of people. But
It
does show the brainwashing and mental gymnastics that goes into these cults. I mean, if you just look at the whole thing, I mean, shit food. The guy's got 20 wives, but everyone else has got to be celibate. I mean, there's some gymnastics to get to that.
Yeah.
It was one hell of a birthday present for Raven. She said the Oklahoma City bombing was on her birthday. Her boyfriend at the time woke her up and said, "Happy birthday." A bunch of people were killed.
That's so
there's your birthday present for you.
On the bright side, it looks as though Raven has definitely moved up in the partner scale.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this next article we're going to read the story was originally published in the Waco Tribune Herald in March 1st, 1993. There is a great set of articles. Unfortunately, if you want to read them, you've got to subscribe to them. But I was able to read the first two articles. It was a 7-part article from the Waco Tribune that covered, like I said, I almost subscribed just so I could grab this stuff, but it was a 7-part expose on the Branch Davidians and David Koresh. The first two articles I read were excellent, but I was able to pull this one before it said, "Haha, you need to subscribe if you want to read further." So
I love it when they do that.
Yeah. Like I said, this is from Rick Ross, a cult deprogrammer who works in Phoenix, Arizona. He said, "The gospel, according to Vernon Howell, is a dangerous, volatile swerve out of the mainstream." This is, like I said, from Rick Ross, who's talked to some of Howell's former followers. They say Howell's brand of religion constitute a cult, and Howell controls the minds of his followers. The group is without any doubt whatsoever, a highly deconstructive, manipulative cult, said Rick Ross. Vernon Howell is the absolute authoritarian leader of this cult. He controls everything and everyone in that compound, period. Although he is not a mental health professional, Ross has developed an educational curriculum on the subject of cults and serves on a nationwide committee on cults and missionaries for the Union of American Hebrew Congregations in New York City. He's been involved in more than 200 destructive cult cases, including the deprogramming of one of Howell's former followers. Ross compares Mount Carmel, the Branch Davidians based 10 miles east of Waco, to Jonestown, a settlement of American cultists in South America's Guyana, led by the Reverend Jim Jones, that happened in 1978, where more than 900 people were killed themselves by drinking cyanide or were murdered. Jim Jones is another cult we will be diving into relatively soon. So, hey, Dr. Josh, how's it going? We got to get Dr. Josh on the show sometime, Chris.
Yes.
I was actually saying last night to Lucy that I've got to get, because I felt so dumb sat there in a science conversation with Jen and Matt, and I was like, I just need to get Dr. Josh on so me and him can talk history, and then I won't feel as well. I mean, I won't. I wouldn't put myself on the same level as Dr. Josh, obviously, but at least I can talk on the topic.
I had Dr. Josh and Megan on my channel, and the level of knowledge these two have it's phenomenal. I mean, it is just great, and I love listening to Dr. Josh talk, and I watch him on Tang all the time.
Well, hang on. I've got one complaint. I'm going to make this very, very, very public complaint about something Dr. Josh has done, and I think it's a genuine complaint to make, and it's to do with his new book. There's one thing I love. It's the soothing tones of Dr. Josh's voice. And he went and got Seth Andrews to man, it's look, Seth is, he's got that great radio voice, but sometimes you just want to hear the wonderful tones of Dr. Josh as you're driving along in the car listening to an audiobook.
Anyway, Josh, love to see you, man. Where was I? Okay. So Ross says, I would liken him to the group of Jim Jones from a standpoint that it's a compound, it's isolated, it's extremely totalitarian. So that gives you what he means by where he would compare them to Jonestown. Priscilla Coates, a 10-year cult awareness network volunteer based in the organization's Glendale, California office, also said Howell's group is unsafe and destructive. The Cult Awareness Network is a nonprofit group that chapters in 21 states that addresses the issues of cults. I've actually looked into them. They are really good. If you guys want to learn some stuff about cult and cult behavior, check out the Cult Awareness Network. Coates was a national director of the group when it was known as Citizens Freedom Foundation Cult Awareness Network. Both Ross and Coates said they talked with two people who had left the Branch Davidians. The two cult experts said they believe Howell practices mind control, which Chris said you and Jade, you have both talked about it before, where you go, what is it, neuro-linguistic programming, and
NLP,
when you're giving speeches and stuff.
Yeah, it's a way of well, I guess there's two aspects to it. There's the way that you'll use the tone of your voice to get certain points across, and then the body language movement to go with it. So usually if you're standing there delivering something to a crowd, it's the way that you capture attention, where you sort of suddenly raise your voice and you're talking like this to really draw people in. And as you're doing that, you obviously can't see me at the moment, but you might have your hand out sort of like in a power sort of moment. And then when you want to soften it down to, and that's why you all need to give me money. That's sort of when you might bring your hand back or something like that. It's actually something that they do teach in Bible college, and also teach in advanced sales and marketing courses as well, ironically. But it's something that's used very, very effectively and it's not something that, you can learn it, but you can't always do it. There's people who, I guess it's like anything. You can learn anything. It doesn't mean you can actually carry it out. But you'll find a lot of the more successful speakers, whether they're religious, political, are very, very good with neuro-linguistic programming. That's why you also see some political leaders who they might seem like they're going to set the world on fire and they're sensational, but then you put them in front of a microphone and a podium and they kind of fizzle to nothing.
And then there's also like for in our church especially, the pastor would get up there and he would be doing, oh, you can feel the spirit moving, and we're singing and we're having all these emotions, and so you feel, this great ecstatic feeling, and he's telling you that's the Holy Spirit, that's God speaking to you. See, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and you're getting this reaction. And I believed it for a long time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned music, because it's you go into any charismatic church, what they'll do is they'll start with a couple of real pump up songs to get people in that sort of state of a mind. They'll slow it down a bit for the next one before the fourth one will be a real slow, contemplative, I surrender, I give myself to you sort of thing, before they go out and do the tithe talk to ask you for money. And then it's usually followed by, after they get the money from everyone, it's a little bit of a sort of semi pump up, just to get people focused before the preacher goes and preaches his sermon. So it's interesting, and look, most people don't even realize that they're doing it. It's just the system that they've always known and how things have always worked. But yeah, that's absolutely what happens in so many charismatic churches now.
So, going on. So, okay. So Ross says Howell breaks down cult members to where they have little or no self-worth or individuality. They are conditioned to be passive and obedient. Mind control comes from isolation, control of the environment, and setting up doctrines that override the individual's needs. He said Howell twists people's belief in God into commitment to him. Ross said most people at Mount Carmel probably would not say they were committed to Howell as their absolute leader. They would probably say that they are committed to God. Their commitment to Howell in their minds is synonymous with their commitment to God. Priscilla Coates says the cults themselves always say they are disgruntled members. That's their standard line, that they're lying. Our feeling is that they have no reason to lie to us. Followers become accepting. Now, this next part is in the article. It says is followers become accepting. So this is talking about how he would get people to follow with him. So Ross says he deprogrammed a man who had been with Howell for at least 5 years. The man said he was afraid to be identified, but he told the Tribune Herald reporters that he attended long Bible studies, sometimes for 18 hours while in the cult. People go into the cult wanting to learn, so they end up end up becoming accepting of what he has said. You reach a point where you'll see things go on, or you'll be told things and they'll go against your better judgment. But because they're now starting to doubt that you can trust your own judgment, you can now see conflict starting to develop in your mind. Individuals in the groups were broken down. Every aspect of life was controlled, from finances to food. Ross and Coates said that the man was used for physical labor on various construction projects at Mount Carmel. He was physically depleted. Ross said of the man, there are rigorous work programs going on in there. They are essentially a free labor force to Howell's beck and call. The former cult member said the building projects included a pool and a gym, and his followers would often work on empty stomachs. So going on from there, the next part is talking about working without food. So sometimes it would be torment. He said the cult members would go without food all day, and then Howell will hold a Bible study late at night, berating members for various things. All the while, Howell would be eating perhaps something as rich and tempting as ice cream, he said, and after the Bible study, then they would get to eat. Howell's group was detrimental to the man he deprogrammed. The man said he feels very angry over the loss of years he spent with Howell. Sometimes, though, he still wonders about Howell's seemingly superhuman knowledge of the Bible. When I die, I'm going to end up standing in front of this guy. Am I going to be standing? When I die, am I going to end up standing in front of this guy? He had asked. Ross said just about anybody can get involved in a cult, that members are basically just like anybody else. Another former member, Robert Scott of Colorado, said Howell's group could recruit anyone. I don't care who you are. You could be the strongest person in the world. I don't care who you are, because all they need is a foothold. And that is the key. With cult members, politicians, successful businessmen, serial killers, they just need to find
YouTube
that foothold.
personalities.
YouTube personalities, exactly. They just need to find that foothold, and once they got that foothold, they got you. And they would, you coming off that foothold, they would use everything they can to keep that foothold and make it bigger and bigger. And that's how, like you said, even the strongest person can fall line and pray to a cult, just because they've got that foothold, and then they can start whittling away at you from the inside.
And I think, and I might be wrong on this might just be my limited experience, but I think that foothold is generally people's weakness. You know, when people are struggling, that's when cults try to get you. When you're going through stuff that is hurting you, and you possibly reach out to a church thinking, hey, this is a safe place where I can go get some help. And then they prey on you in that moment of weakness and get that foothold.
Mm-hmm.
That might not be universal, but
actually, it is. It is
it's very universal.
Yeah, it is one of the things, and Chris could probably talk about this in the marketing aspect of it. But with cults, and once again, serial killers, they will prey on your vulnerabilities, whether it be your emotional vulnerability or your intellectual invulnerability, whether or not you know something or you want to learn more about this, but you're ignorant of what it was. They can go, aha, this is what it was. And then they start you down this path of talking to you about something that you know nothing about, but they seem so knowledgeable in it that they'll start to make you believe things. Flat Earth is a good example of that. People get pulled into flat Earth because they want to know more about it. They don't understand it, and they listen to these guys like a Mark Sargent or Eric Dubay and Nathan Thompson,
Bobby Mack.
Bobby Mack. But they listen to those types of people that seem and they sound like they know exactly what they're talking about, and that's how they get pulled in, because they'll go, hey, he said, and this is how it is, even though we know that's 100% bullshit. They believe it because they came into it not knowing, and this is what they've been fed. So that's why I always say, when you're researching a thing, do not take from one article. Do not take from one YouTube video. Pull up multiple articles, multiple sources, multiple videos, and see where the overlap lies between those. Try to get differing opinions. When I'm researching things, when it comes to religion, I always go from I always take the anti-religious and the religious point of view on both of those and see where they overlap. Because you're going to have your pros and your cons on the topic, but if they have an interlocking where they're talking about the same thing, you can generally say this is the truth. And that's what they'll prey upon, because they will only give you that one example, and they will only hit home on that one part of knowledge.
Well, what you'll find when this is speaking about, I guess, fundamentalist Christian churches, what they'll do is, once you get saved, so to speak, which is usually, there's a lot of NLP that goes into that process as well, which is a story for another time. But what they'll do is they'll tend to get you into a private, what we used to call them encounter meetings, where yourself and other people who have been saved at the same time get together, and it's like it's a very much this is the church, this is what we believe. But during that, there'll be I remember there was always a little form that people would have to fill out, the sins that they've committed, and just so they could be prayed away. And it'd be everything from the innocuous things like told a lie and and stuff like that to, some fairly personal things, and because people were in this mindset and sort of controlled in it, they would tick everything that they'd done. There was a complete trust for the organization because it was the way it was all being handled. But then those things would be used against people. It's if someone were to tick that on that they were gay, they're going to be dealt with in a certain way. They're going to be, that's going to be the big focus, and that mightn't be something that they, or that they've had those thoughts. That mightn't be something that they want people to know about. So what they do is they find, and look, this isn't directed at most of the people who do this, because most of the people who do this are just following a system and a process. It's like McDonald's. You follow the system that's been set up. But it finds what people perceive to be the weakness or the area that they want to work on, and exploits that, to keep you in the religion or the cult, because it's only through, like, I guess I'll use the easy example, which is, someone who had thoughts of same-sex attraction. It's the religion is the only thing that's going to stop them from having that sinful thought, and it's the only thing that's going to be able to help them. And if they leave, well, they're just going to go down this degenerate sort of lifestyle that it's going to destroy them. So they have to stay. So there's that fear of, even if they have some doubts, well, I can't leave the church, because if I leave the church or I leave the religion, all these terrible things are going to happen.
Yeah, Raven, Verillion, and Sandy do have some good points here in the comments. Sandy says it sounds a lot like American corporate culture. Raven says you go to a meeting to hopefully get help, and they grab the issue you have and they reel you in. Verillion says it sounds like a lot of those motivational seminars. Raven also says they hear you talking in public to someone else and then they step in. Sandy,
funnily enough, I've had a corporate career in corporate training, and the skills I acquired from the church is what I've used to basically to be able to, like, the how to speak, how to keep people's attention. That's what, and I'm not using it for any nefarious reasons. Don't get me wrong, because I've just realised that could come across in the wrong way. But certainly, when you're speaking, if I'm running a training seminar, say on digital media, for instance, you want to keep people's attention, and you need to know how to keep people's attention. So,
listen.
Yeah. Godless Granny's muted us. Oh,
you gotta get back to work.
Yeah.
So Sandy also said, if you knew some of the big corporate meetings I've attended where they were imparting important information and the sales pitch they give us to make us tolerate it. I have been in some big corporate meetings. You listen to some of those and I'm watching the people around me. They're just like,
oh yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people?
People go to these things and drink the Kool-Aid in a big way. And if you're sort of there and you haven't drunk the Kool-Aid, you're looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, let's get back to where we're at. So, where was I? Okay. So Scott had said
Jay, really quickly, I'm going to leave because it is past my bedtime. I need my beauty sleep. So if you are good to shut down the stream and everything,
I'm good.
Everyone, I will say good night to you all, or good morning, or good day, or whatever it is, and have a wonderful evening. Jay, incidentally, while we've been on here, I've gone through, because I've got access to some of the uni libraries and newspapers, and I've got some really good. I've got 127 articles we can go through from the 90s on all of this that are probably going to be very relevant for next week.
Oh, on the Branch Davidians in Waco?
Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot. So like I said, there is a lot of information out there. That is one of the benefits of when this happened, is because it was just at the start of the information age.
The only thing is a lot of it is still stuck behind paywalls.
Yeah, there's a problem. There's a lot stuck behind paywalls. But so, all right, Chris. We're almost done here, too. So, you have yourself a good night. All right, so getting back to where we're at. Okay, Scott said Howell freely admitted the group was a cult, but Scott had never perceived the use of mind control. Does the spider ever say to the fly he's going to eat him? He asked. Cults exploit people who are vulnerable. Recruits may be suffering from the death of a loved one, experiencing a job change, or starting college. Howell probably uses many of the Branch Davidians' past connection to the Seventh-Day Adventists to gain easier access to potential recruits. The religion believes in modern-day prophecy. She still believes the stories of the people who came to her from Howell's cult, my coach said. The cults themselves always say they are just disgruntled members, that their standards align, and that they're lying. Our feeling is that they have no reason to lie to us. Ross said he believes Howell is prone to violence. I'm going to get back to that one in just a minute, though. That little statement, our feeling is that they have no reason to lie to us. I will get back to that in just a minute because we're about done with his article. Ross said he believes Howell is prone to violence, as he has already demonstrated through the 1987 shootout with his rival, George Rhoden. Speaking out and exposing Howell might bring in the authorities in some way to help those being held in that compound through the kind of psychological, emotional slavery and servitude. Ross said authorities need to understand that Howell is fully capable of violence. You would say that this is a very dangerous group. So going back to our feeling is that they have no reason to lie to us. Actually, there is a lot of reasons for cult members to lie about the cults they were in, because they could be disgruntled of what they went through. They may have been kicked out of the so-called cult or religious group, wherever you want to say it, for reasons they don't believe they should have been kicked out from. So they will go through and they will lie and say these things are happening. There was something, I don't remember which cult it was. That's the problem with a lot of the research I do, especially serial killers and cults, is that I get so much it jumbles up sometimes, and sometimes the Rolodex doesn't flip to the right one. But there was a cult that some of the other the members were saying that they were doing things to kids, when actuality that was not true at all. They was a very strict no touchy of kids. But they said, and there was even past members and current members, and when the FBI came in, there was no signs of this at all. So it was former cult members that were kicked out of the cult trying to get back at the cult for kicking them out. So there are reasons to lie. So you can't always 100% take what a former cult member says to heart. You can't believe it's gospel, because there are reasons for them to lie. Now, if you can get independent sources, multiple different former cult members in different situations where they're talking to you and coming up with the same things, then you can start to piece together what's true and what's not. So,
and I think that, yeah, like, I think in every situation, there's obviously people that lie. I don't know if that's I think about my experiences and talking about what I went through, and what am I trying to say here? I know that people lie, and I totally get that is a thing, but I think that the case of that happening is lower than people who come out and just talk about their experiences.
Yeah, the lying, like I said, is going to be few and far between. A lot of times, ex-cult members will come out and straight tell you the truth, because they don't want others to fall in line and fall into the trap that they fell into. So they'll come back and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what you need to know. But there are, just like there is in everything, there's always the exception where somebody's going to lie through their teeth just to get back at what's going on, because I'm going to call them cults, but they're not all cults. I say organizations out there, even religious organizations that are not cult-ish. Call them cult lights.
Yeah.
Where yes, they are certain things that you're allowed to do that you're not allowed to do. I believe we call them now religions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same aspect. It's when you come down to like we talked about here with the Branch Davidians on regulating what you can eat, what you can do, where you can go, who you can talk to, who you can marry. There is a fine line between a religion and a cult.
Mm-hmm.
And if a lot of people don't study these things, then they're going to look at a religion as a cult when it's not actually a cult. When Catholicism and in Christianity first started, it was considered a cult. The Romans considered it 100% a cult, but it is now a mainstream religion, just like Islam was a cult. Buddhism, I can't say Buddhism was a cult, but it kind of was because it's an offshoot of Hinduism. And at that time, Hinduism is, if I remember right, is the oldest continuous religion. I can't say the oldest religion, but it's the oldest continuous religion. So every religion, almost every religion, basically starts out as a cult, and they can weave their way through the stuff like that. So, I recommend, and I don't do this. I usually try to push people we know or guests on the show and stuff. But if you want to look into cults, Telltale is a really good series on cults. You can look at Telltale. That goes for everybody in the chat too. If you want to know more about cults, because he breaks down and he even gets into the major religions and determine and let you know what's a cult and what's not a cult. His style, not a lot of people like the way he does his stuff. I like the way Telltale does his stuff.
Oh yeah, I do too.
Yeah. And I will tell you right off, I don't agree with everything Telltale says. In my experience, there are some things that he says that I don't agree with, but that's okay because you can not agree with somebody and still enjoy what they do.
Absolutely.
So, but do you got anything you want to add here?
I don't think so. This was very interesting. I had never heard of the Davidians before, so I learned a lot. And to me, it's fascinating to watch cults and listen to all the things you guys talk about and see the similarities in how these things were used in how I grew up, even if not to the same extremes, but like, we had the same thing where we ate healthy because you had to take care of your body for God because it was God's temple and you had to exercise and you had to work. And, we had all of these little aspects just in not so dictatorship way. So I just love learning about cults. I find it so fascinating.
Yeah, and Raven says it best. You should never agree with everything someone has to say. Yeah. I mean, you can agree with him, but if you start believing everything that person has to say, then it becomes a problem. So always check your sources. Always speak your mind. Always discuss differences. Even if you don't like a person and your differences are out there, that discussion can be wonders. So thank you everybody that joined us. I know this kind of long-winded one. Cults and conspiracies can kind of get that way, especially when we start talking cults, because there is a lot of information and there's a lot of things people will find disturbing and whatnot. And unlike conspiracies, where those are a little bit more fun to listen to poke fun at and go, ha ha. Sandy says, anyone who says my body belongs to them or God can just go away. Your body belongs to you. And what you choose to do with your body is your own decision. So, and I agree with that 100%. So, thank you everybody that has joined us. Thank you to our channel members, to Raven and Sandy and Davros and anybody else I missed. Thank you guys for helping us out here on the channel. Lots of stuff coming back. We've just come off the 2-week hiatus, so there's a lot of stuff going on. Next week, we will be covering part 2, the Branch Davidians. It may be a longer running one, because I think what we learned with Heaven's Gate is if you stretch it out too long, by the time you get to the 3rd and 4th episode, you're kind of going, I'm done. Even I was done talking about it, and I'm the host, and I'm like, we got another week of this fucking website. Yes, Verillion. Thank you. It was a great. Yeah, Davros was here at the beginning, and then he disappeared. I don't know what happened.
He's watching TikTok.
But yeah. Yes. Speaking of, just a lot of chilling out going out here. Check out Jade and myself over on TikTok. Check out Davros. He's over there. Lots of good entertaining stuff going on TikTok over there. Tomorrow night, in American time, which will be butt crack early for Australians. Jade and Jen with your On the Couch. Is Catherine going to be joining you guys?
Not this week. I think this week we're going to have Claire.
Okay, because I think Chris needs to change that in the description, because I think it said Catherine was joining you guys this week.
Yeah, originally she was going to be our first guest, but we had to switch that up a little bit. So I think this week it's going to be Claire.
Okay. 6-pack on Friday. Ken Hovind watch along on Saturday. I don't know if there was anything else going on Sunday, which would be Monday. I know Chris was talking about dropping some stream cuts. Aw. Thanks, Sandy. Sandy, $5 super chat. Jay gets the super chat award today. Grins, Be Water, my friends. Grins. Yes, absolutely. Be Water. Thank you, Sandy, so much for that. $5 super chat. Yeah, anyways, Chris is looking at cutting the dumbass tweet of the week sections out of the 6-packs and posting them as their own videos. So those should be funny.
Yeah.
Next week we've got part 2, which we'll be covering Waco, its connection to Ruby Ridge and Oklahoma City, and conspiracies behind what happened, because depending on who you talk to, depends on what happened at Waco. And I will be pulling the official FBI report if I can find it. I know I've seen it before. So I'll give you what the official FBI report says. Now, whether or not everybody knows, those aren't always 100% true. But it will be what the official FBI report says happened. But like I said, there's difference of opinions. It's too early.
It's too early, I know.
So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for showing in. This has been Coast Conspiracies. I am Jay. That's Jade. That was Chris. And until next time, be water, my friends.
Bye.